Hello everyone, Eva here, and welcome back to the next episode of Art Side of Life, where I chat with inspiring artists and create various art-related videos. Before we go to the interview, I wanted to let you know that my course Storytelling with Color and Light is now available for you at artsideoflife.com/color. I designed the course for beginner and intermediate artists, breaking the big topic of color and light into smaller parts to help you understand the main concept so you can make your artworks appealing and believable. So check it out at artsideoflife.com/color. And now, let's go back to the interview. My guest today is Lucas Graciano. Lucas is a multi-award-winning freelance artist teaching at Watts Atelier in California. He focuses on fantasy illustration, doing book covers, card art, and other promotional works for clients such as Blizzard, Dark Horse Publishing, Upper Deck, and Wizards of the Coast. And now, please welcome Lucas and let's go to the interview. So, welcome everyone to the next episode of Art Side of Life, and I'm super happy to have Lucas here. Hi!
Hello, thanks for having me.
Thank you for being here, and let's just jump into your background, and maybe you can tell us when did you realize, like, okay, I want to be an artist, or I want to be involved in like the artistic career.
So I started my career, first I was doing caricatures at a local theme park, and that kind of, I'd always enjoyed art growing up through high school, and then I had found a job doing the caricatures at a local theme park at Legoland. And
cool.
yeah, so we live really close to it here, about 5-minute drive. But so through there, I found a school, an art school that was local, and I was able to get training and build my skills up to enough where I could start working in a very low-level visual development job for Sony. So I was doing working on video games, working for their cinematic department. So we were doing a lot of in-between video game scenes. So I was doing things like storyboarding, character designs, environment designs, and I was okay. I didn't really enjoy it as much, but it was a good chance for me to make some income and continue my training. So through that time, I kept working on my skills and eventually moved into illustration. Where I'm doing the same thing now, and it's all freelance illustration for various game companies, Magic the Gathering. A lot of my work is with them now. I've done work on all sorts of different IPs: Star Wars, Lord of the Rings. I've worked in comics, but yeah, I've just kind of grown up being inspired by comics and movies and illustrators like Frank Frazetta and Boris Vallejo. And yeah, it's kind of cool to get the chance to do that kind of work now.
And what helped you the most to develop your skills, when you were looking at these other artists and like, okay, I want to move on to like better techniques or improve your artworks? Did you take it like step by step, like anatomy, backgrounds, or did you have like all in one?
So the school I trained at, and I teach at now as well. It's called the Watts Atelier. And we are a fundamental-based school, so we do other various types of curriculums, but we're known for our core curriculum, like figure drawing, figure painting, the very traditional style of teaching art. So it gave me a good base that I could kind of springboard from and direct it towards something that I wanted to do, which was fantasy illustration. And I just really focused a lot on that fundamental information and skill building. And then we had other classes: perspective, composition, anatomy, all the other skills you'll need to be successful in this career. And yeah, I kept training and I fell in love with it, and I kept doing it. And then over time, you get good enough and someone's going to hire you.
Did you have to put like the 10,000 hours, or was there like a breaking point, or like the point of your career, like, okay, I like my art, it's much better?
I think you go through phases. There's times where it's like, that's a nice piece. And then you bomb one, and it's just like, it's a back and forth thing. And, I try to stay as consistent as possible, but there's so many things that factor in that it's really tough to be as consistent as you need to be in this industry sometimes. But yeah.
And do you have like the most memorable piece or a project you ever worked on, maybe because of a story or a time of your life?
That's a good question. I have a few that I really like that I've done that I think kind of represent how I would like to paint consistently all the time. There was one project in particular that was a lot of fun. I think he gave just the right amount of freedom or just the right amount of direction in the project, and then he let me kind of just go with it. And I felt so much more free, and I was able to put a lot of me into it. And this was a project where the guy wanted to have an illustration. As long as it had a woman, a dog, and a dragon, I can paint whatever I wanted.
Cool.
So I was like, that's kind of cool. That's fun. And it turned out to be my, oh shoot, I do not remember the name of the piece. That's bad. But it's a big dragon. There's these women crawling up the snowy bank, and there's one dragon it's a companion dragon and another big dragon that's coming in. So a friendly dragon and a monster dragon. And he's guarding it, and the other one is kind of coming in for a fight.
Oh, so, awesome.
One of my more successful pieces, and a very memorable one that I enjoyed working on.
And did you have some cartoons or movies or books which influenced you as a child or teenager, which kind of made you fall in love with fantasy?
Oh, sure. Yeah. I'm an 80s child, so I grew up watching movies like Conan the Barbarian, Dragon Slayer, a lot of that kind of dark, gritty fantasy. And that's what I've always been attracted to, is that Frank Frazetta is one of my biggest influences and a big inspiration. And his work's amazing. Most of the illustrators in my world he's number one in their list of top influence, I think. But movies were big. Books, Lord of the Rings, obviously, is a huge. I love that series. I read the Game of Thrones series a couple times. Those kind of fantasy novels and comics and things. I grew up reading the Dark Horse comics like Predator and Aliens, and I grew up watching those 80s movies. Probably way too young, but it was fun, and definitely shaped me.
And when you mentioned Frazetta's work, have you also studied the value compositions and poses and all of that, or maybe other artists?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a good question. And that's something I picked up from our schools. We're big on master studies. So, and there's different ways that you can study the masters. I run a class that's called composition studies from the masters. And we do little gouache paintings in our sketchbooks of just color notes, shape organizations, just try to understand how the basic compositions work for these masters. Sometimes color harmonies, value breakups, things like that. So they're little quick sketches that are maybe 45 minutes to an hour and a half or so. And they're really valuable. And then you do longer ones too. So I find that master studies are really valuable. I've got a Frazetta one here that I've been working on. We talked a little bit about the comp ones, but the master studies is a larger oil painting study, so you can see it's much more involved. So something like this is going to take 40 hours plus.
So yeah, because it's really great to study, especially as you mentioned, Frazetta's work, because he's awesome with simplifying the value compositions into just 3 value groups and these kind of things, for example. So yeah, really cool. And so, as you mentioned, the classes, what you are studying, teaching, it's the value composition. You also teach color and light, or how did you get to actually teaching there?
So our school is a very intimate area. It has a few hundred students, but it's maxed out to about 15 students per teacher, and it's a very small environment, and all the instructors are homegrown. So we've all gone through the curriculum. We've all been part of the school. Jeff's a good friend. All the instructors are really tight, and it's a close family group. So there's a lot of, we all kind of come up the same way. We all have the same principles, the way we think, and we all teach a range of classes. So I'll do everything from the composition class to figure drawing, to portrait painting, to perspective, any number of different classes, depending on where the curriculum's rolling. Usually Jeff kind of runs what he wants to run that term, and then he just kind of places us where he thinks we would do best. So.
And is this your like full-time job, or do you combine like with the freelance work, or what is your maybe main source of income, or how do you put your eggs in the different baskets?
Yeah. So my main income is freelance illustration. I do a lot of work for gaming still. I've been working with Magic the last 8 years or so, and I've been on just about every set. And it still goes pretty strong. I'm usually doing about, on average, maybe a piece a month for them, maybe a little bit more.
Oh, really? Cool.
Yeah, it's a good gig. Magic fits my style a little bit. You know, their style is very much kind of how I like to paint as far as what's out there in the freelance illustration world. I teach 1 day a week, or in maybe 2 classes. So not a whole lot. It's definitely part-time. I enjoy teaching mainly because I like to be a part of the school still. I've been there for 16 years, and it's such a fun, good environment. It's a chance for me to have that social time and to give back a little bit more of what I've gotten out of the school, and see the kids coming up, and it's a good thing to be a part of.
Oh, that's really nice. And how was then for you, as you mentioned, the first maybe job with the Magic and this kind of thing? So how was it for you, to do this networking and finding the projects to work on?
Okay, so I started out just like most people. You build a portfolio. I show it around. I get rejected, and then make adjustments and continue to grow. And then I will pitch it to those same directors, because oftentimes you're meeting with the same people over and over again, a lot of the same art directors, and they start to kind of get to know you a little bit, and they recognize the work, and that you kind of build a little bit of rapport with them. And over time, it takes one director to give you that chance. He says, you know what, I'm gonna try you out, see how you do, and hopefully you do a really good job, and you're turning your work in on time, and you're easy to work with, and then they call you back, and that's kind of how I started out.
Do you have usually a time frame for each artwork, or like is it always the same, or it's different?
It can vary based on how complicated a piece is to work up, but I still have to stick within the deadlines of my client. So for Magic, it's like a 6-week turnaround. So you take however many illustrations you can do within 6 weeks, and that includes sketches, references, all that stuff. So I'm comfortable doing 2 within that time frame. Yeah. Some people take more. A lot of the digital guys will take more. It's usually a little bit faster painting digitally. For me, I enjoy the process of doing oils. And oils have become a big part of my income as well, because the collector base for fantasy art, especially for Magic, Magic art is traditional Magic art is rarer now, because a lot more people are doing digital work. So the demand for it's higher, which means my cost of my originals goes up. So there's a handful of us that are doing traditional Magic work, and that has actually overcome my commission, what I make on commissions from the client alone. So painting traditional has really helped my business a lot.
Before we continue, let's thank our sponsors. If you are a digital artist, you will love AstroPad. AstroPad is an app that turns your iPad Pro into professional wireless graphics tablet for your Mac. I use it to work with Photoshop and Illustrator to create highly rendered artworks for my clients directly on my iPad. I was super excited to discover AstroPad because the painting apps available on iPad don't have all the functionality like Photoshop. With AstroPad, I can use all my favorite and custom-made Photoshop brushes, which is super cool. And because you are part of Artside of Life community, you will get an exclusive 10% discount on AstroPad Studio licenses. To get started, go to artsideoflife.com/AstroPad and enter the promo code ARTSIDE. Are you looking for a top quality print shop and online store to sell your art prints? Then you should definitely check out InPrint. InPrint has been helping artists print and sell gallery quality prints of their work all over the world for over a decade. Created by artists for artists. InPrint ensures that you as an artist get your artworks printed in the highest quality and you earn the highest percentage compared to the others in the industry. The online gallery at inprint.com is curated by the members, resulting in a beautiful and unique collection of work. Support your favorite artists, discover new ones, and start selling through your own gallery today. And because you are part of Artside of Life community, you will get a special 10% discount with the promo code ARTSIDE. Don't wait, visit artsideoflife.com/imprint and use promo code ARTSIDE. And now, let's go back to the interview. And do you have some tips maybe for someone who wants to do also traditional about maybe the contract and these kind of things, what to look for or at, or maybe what to avoid, like maybe, oh, don't do this because then you don't get paid well, or, then you will be time-wise like really restricted or something what you had the experience with?
Yeah, I think for everyone it's a little bit different with how they paint, because I know some artists who put in a lot more hours than I will. My style of art's a little bit looser, so I can usually get them done a little bit faster, relatively fast. So I would say just know your limits, know how long it's going to take you to do a painting, how much detail you can get into a painting within a certain time frame. That's kind of what I would recommend more than anything, is just kind of know where your limits are, what you can and can't do with the medium. If you can get better results doing digital work, do it. In the end, the client doesn't care if it's traditional or digital. They want a good image. And for me, I produce better work in oils than I do digitally. And it's more so just that I haven't put as much time into painting digitally as I have traditional. So I'd say there's advantages and disadvantages to painting traditional, but for me, it's really worked out, and there's a handful of us that are doing really well with it. So I'm going to keep doing it.
That's really great. Yeah. And because maybe some people don't know what is magic, right? Maybe you can just mention that like it's playing cards, right? And people also like collect them and these kind of things, right? Or do you want to mention something more about this big project?
With magic?
Yeah.
So Magic's a bit of a different beast. The fan base on Magic is bigger than most games out there. So that's a big benefit. If it wasn't for the IP, I don't think the work would go for as much as it is. A lot of the stuff I'm painting isn't stuff that I would necessarily, some of it is. There's certain things that I'm painting that very much fit what I would normally paint on my own. But there's certain things where it's like, for example, I had one painting I did a while back, and I was painting it, and I'm like, no one's even going to care about this painting. There's nothing big about it. And then, 8 months down the road, the card is released and the image is released, and I get a dozen emails about that painting. And I'm like, wait a minute, what's going on? So I call a few people that I know that are involved in the game a little bit more, like, oh, yeah, the card that painting is on is very valuable. So they're not necessarily attracted to the art as much as they are the nostalgia that comes with the card, how playable that card, how popular that card is in the game. So it's a bit of a catch. Some illustrations I do are nice paintings that go on bad cards that will sell for a lot, but then I have a lot of nice paintings that go on bad cards that just don't, they don't do anything. They don't move. People are just like, well, it's not on a popular card, and they're looking at it from a collector point of the game rather than the art, unfortunately. But it's bittersweet. So it's nice to have people that will pay that much money for an original of something that I don't particularly care for as much. But it's kind of sad to see it when it's a nice painting and it's not selling. It's like, well, what's the deal? So.
Yeah, definitely. And so you can, as you mentioned, you can sell the original artworks then in your own store, and then that's one of the sources of the income.
Correct. Yeah. In fact, it's probably about 50-60% of my income throughout the year, which has been good. It's hard to make it as an illustrator, a freelance illustrator, on the commissions alone. You have to bank on doing shows, maybe signings, selling prints and other accessories. For me, selling the original, it's almost like taking on another illustration card or another 2 illustration cards, because I can sell that original and put all I have into that one piece, make it solid, and then I don't have as many cards out there, but at least I have that income, and I'm not worried so much about that as I am about doing a quality piece and having my name be on something that I'm proud of.
Yeah. That's really great because then the money from the art can help you to create more art, so you are not
Yes.
limited. So that's really great.
Yeah,
And do you
exactly.
have like events you really like to go to? You know, like some fantasy or something like that.
So I'm not a huge show person. I don't like doing a lot of events like that. The ones I mainly do now, I'll sign up for are they're specialized to Magic. They're called Magic Grand Prix, and they're done all over the world. And they'll fly artists out and put them up, and just have them as kind of attractions for the fans. So more fans will come and get their cards signed. So I've been lucky enough to hit Magic in a point where, I got to travel all around the world on Magic's dime. And it's been great. It's been a really cool, special thing. It's very specialized. There's usually only a few artists at one of these shows, sometimes up to 20 or 30, but they're very specialized for these events. I was doing another show for a while called EluxCon, and that's one that's based on traditional fantasy artists, especially. So it's all artists who are painting in oils or some kind of traditional media, and it was set up in various different spots, but usually some kind of gallery, and everyone goes and displays their traditional work, and collectors were big on going to that. It wasn't a big kind of, how do you say it, like a public show, like public people wouldn't just come in, it's not like a Comic-Con or anything like that. It's more intimate and specialized. So I was doing that for a while, and that really helped get my career going with and getting collectors noticing my work. But after a while, I think the collectors that usually do those kind of shows, they buy a piece from you, and they come back next year and they already have one of your pieces. So you kind of fall down the totem pole a little bit. So I find doing that show isn't quite as valuable for me anymore. It's my favorite show to do because it is so much fun. All my friends are there, and we call it the vacation con, but it's hard to justify it because you don't, it's hit or miss whether you really come away making money at that show. So yeah, I don't do a whole lot of shows, but the ones I do are usually the Magic ones.
Oh yeah, so that actually sounds really cool. Like, oh, I do only Magic, So.
Yeah.
But
it's scary though, because you don't want to put all your eggs in one basket, right?
Yeah.
That can be kind of hard to stomach. So I have the teaching thing on the side, and I do other side projects, but I enjoy working Magic. Magic has so many perks that I can. I try to give them most of the priority in my schedule, and then.
So how do you organize yourself, or do the planning, because you work from home and then you have different projects? So how does your planning look like?
It's crazy. My daughter has recently she's a kindergartner, so she's been in school now. That's helped a lot. But for the last 5 years, it was a lot because I'm a stay-at-home career dad, and my wife has gone like 9 to 5, so it was kind of rough there for about 5 years. And I would just usually work nights and weekends.
Yeah, that's what I thought. I assumed, like working night.
Nights and weekends, yeah. But it's since gotten easier this year, especially. So I got a good solid chunk of time in the morning, and then I'll usually do a little bit of work at night as well. But I'm fairly good about getting my work done on time and sitting down and getting the work done I need to get done.
Yeah, so for you it's more like fluid, like when you sit down and you work for a few hours or something like that, or you set a time for yourself, like from 4 to 7 I do this or something like that?
Yeah, I try to do that. It doesn't always work out. When you got a 6-year-old, it's I've got the do not disturb sign, but it doesn't work.
Do you guys also draw sometimes together?
Yeah. I got her a little painting kit, so we'll go and paint and stuff like that. So I want to get her into it a little bit. She's very creative and loves to paint, so I want to spark that fire a little bit, fan the flames a little bit there. But yeah, we'll see.
And do you use oils also when you paint together, or is that your go-to medium for everything?
No, I'll use gouache as well. I have her using watercolor. She's got a little watercolor kit. I think it's fairly easy for a kid for now. If she really shows more interest in it, I'll definitely introduce her to more mediums. But if we're out painting together, it's usually I'm painting in gouache and she's painting in watercolor.
And do you have like a favorite brand or one brush or like type of paints you cannot live without?
I'm pretty versatile, but there's some that I like more than others. For my gouache paints, it's almost always a Winsor Newton gouache. And then I use the little tiny Robert Simmons brushes. They're like the white sable brushes, usually the small round ones. And then some of those carry over into my oils as well. I use a lot of those Robert Simmons for the detail stuff. But I recently found one that I really like. What is it called? Princeton, I think it is. Oh, no, Connoisseur. And it's a pure synthetic Connoisseur. So I like these. These are nice. But I don't know. I was using a brand for a long time called Royal Lane Nickel, but they have recently, I think they're going to stop making them because it was made of mongoose hair. And so they're not going to make those anymore. And I'm fine with that. So I'm just going to find something new to work with.
Yeah, always try out different things and I'm like, oh, actually, I like this.
Yeah, that's the thing is you kind of get tunnel vision a little bit sometimes. And I find that branching out and just experimenting a little bit within reason. I'm not on a job. I might not experiment too much, because it can drop you back in your deadline quite a bit if things aren't working out.
If it doesn't work, yeah.
So, yeah, right.
Do you sometimes sketch your stuff digitally before you go to full-on painting traditional, or you don't do that, or you do like different sketches with pencil, or how is your art process basically?
My pre-production process is kind of like I'll do a lot of digital work preliminary. Mainly, I started doing that because I was traveling a lot and I needed to get work done on the road, so I could bring my laptop and just work on that. When I can sketch in my sketchbook and it's practical for me, I like to sketch in as traditional as possible. But digital is very nice for preliminary stuff. It's very easy to cut and paste and send off to the directors while I'm on the road. So I like digital for that sense. But as far as finishing stuff, I try to stay away from digital finishes.
And do you create more different thumbnails before you start the full-on painting and like different compositions and stuff?
Sure. Yeah, I most of my my preliminary work, I'll do anywhere from 3 to 6 sketches for one idea. Lately, what I've been doing is, because digital is so versatile, I can start with an image, start with a thing, and save the image, and then continue with that one. Maybe I shrink the character, or maybe I move the character here or there. It's kind of like beating it into submission until it really works for me. So sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes I have to start from scratch and develop a whole new idea. But it's nice to have that ability. If things are working, use those elements. If they're not, take them out and move things around until they are.
Yeah, and do you have like reference images or like collection of reference images, or you go to location to take pictures, maybe not for dragons, but for other stuff?
Sure. Yeah, I use a lot of reference. I think that's important for the kind of look I want to have in my paintings. I'm just my memory is not as good. I can't memorize those things and paint them. It gets better the more you paint that specific thing. Like dragons, I've done a lot of dragons. And I referenced a lot of creatures like, snapdragon turtles or alligators or bats, the wings. So various different animals that you try to push together to make something fantastical believable. So after a while, you paint a lot of that stuff. You can kind of wing certain things and make it work. And I maybe do that a little too much sometimes. I go like, I don't need reference for that. I'll just paint it. I know what it looks like. And then I'm struggling through it, and I go, okay, maybe I should reference it. And I go back, find the reference, and it's probably best just to find the reference in the beginning.
And do you sometimes go to the zoo as well, still to practice, or I guess you did it more when you were studying?
Yeah, probably more when I was studying. I would love to get down there more. It's just no time to really to take a day to go do something like that. I think it's better well spent on Google. Google's got so many different images and more versatile with what I can find. If I go to the zoo, it's just to have fun and sketch, and just have, animal drawing time.
And so how do you schedule maybe your social or networking time, when you work from home and you work all the time as well? So how do you plan that?
It's not much. Most of my social time is done through teaching. So I go down to the school and hang out. I'm able to teach in between the course and at lunchtime or whatever. That's my social time with other artists. I've got a 6-year-old and a family here, so and a career that's full time. So it's not as good as it should be.
But at least you can go with the family to the zoo, right? So then there is a
That's
social
true.
time there, right?
That's true. Yeah, we do have the family time for sure. I think I'm kind of typical, like most typical artists that kind of they seclude themselves a lot and are very antisocial a lot of times. Not everyone, but I'm kind of stereotypical that way.
Yeah, I'm kind of the opposite. I was like, okay, how do I work with people if I'm freelancing,
Yeah, right. And starting a blog like this that you're doing, I'm sure it's an outlet for you. That's good.
Yeah, definitely. So we can inspire people and we can also have a conversation. So that's 2 in 1.
Excellent.
And when we talked about the references and inspiration, do you have some fun, weird thing which inspires you?
Weird thing that inspires me. I don't know. I'm not. I guess lots of weird creatures and stuff. I'm not really sure how to answer that one, but lots of weird creatures and nature. I think I'm mainly inspired by the typical stuff, movies, books, video games, other artists, obviously. Behind me, I've got a couple of artists on the wall that artwork that I really admire and use as inspiration. But that's about it.
Can you recommend us maybe some one book or more if you want, and maybe why?
Oh, a book. Read lots of books. I don't know. Usually if I recommend a book, it's that War of Art by Stephen Pressfield. Mm-hmm. That's a good one. It's a quick read. It's about the resistance in our lives that keeps us from being creative. Mm-hmm. He kind of puts a name on the procrastination. He gives like little things in people's lives that keep them from producing work and procrastinating. That book's it's inspirational. It's kind of a kick in the butt book, and it's a quick read, very cheap. But that's one I always like to read. I go back to that one about once every couple of years. I'll go and read it. I read a lot of fantasy books. I like a lot of that stuff that kind of gets my brain in this, otherworldly thinking. I love a lot of Bryan Sanderson's work. He does a lot of high fantasy books. Like he did the Mistborn trilogy that was really good. He finished off the Wheel of Time series, which is a popular series. He's one of my favorite writers. Any book he writes is, if not good, great. So I like him a lot.
Oh, really great. And when you mention also the procrastination and these kind of things which kind of can stop us sometimes from creating, what was maybe the most difficult time of your art career, and what did you learn during this time?
That's another good question. I think it's just sometimes you can rest on your laurels. I found myself resting on my laurels a bit, where I felt too comfortable, and I got a little bit lazy about certain things, and I didn't realize it until later on when I wasn't getting the high quality work I was normally getting. And I was like, well, what's going on here? And I had to step back and reevaluate what I was doing and kind of figure out what is it that is keeping me from getting the jobs I really want to get. And to me, it came up as a laziness, like things like I was saying with the reference. Like, I don't need a reference. I'll just do this. But I find oftentimes if I put that extra work in the beginning, you get a much better end product. Yeah. So for me, it was maybe resting on my laurels too much and having to reevaluate.
Yeah, and on the other note, like maybe what are you most excited about now? What are maybe the projects you are looking forward to now, or maybe something which is coming up soon?
Yeah, I don't have a whole lot coming up. It's hard for me to look too much into the future because I'm so darn busy. I need to make that time. I have a plan, but it's very broad strokes right now. I want to develop my own IP at some point. But and I've got a sketchbook dedicated for it, but it's only a few pages in, and it's been like that for the last few years. So I don't have a whole lot of time. I'm usually too busy with the commission work and with teaching and family. So I'm sure there will be a time in my life where I'll be able to focus on that and make that a priority. But for now, I like kind of like the way things are going. I'm just going to ride this as long as I can, and then hopefully along the side when I get the time, make plans for after this.
Yeah, definitely. Because also planning the future and maybe something which is like exciting for you in the, I don't know, 5 to 10 years, maybe what would be your like dream scenario if you cannot fail and just, like do whatever you want?
Right. I would probably develop my own IP, develop my own world and create something in the vein of like Game of Thrones or the Witcher series. And, I love that gritty fantasy. And if I could develop my own new idea for that, I think that would be ideal. And that's kind of what I'm working on. But like I said, it's still very in its infancy. So I can't really talk anything about that at all.
Cool. And how would you start your developing the whole world? Do you start from a character, or do you go for environment and the place, or do you start with something else? What is your thinking process?
I don't really know. I'm kind of like, I have inspirations, so I sketch them out, and as I develop ideas, I write them down, and then I've got this like journal, my sketchbook journal, so I'll go back through and read. But right now, I think it's mainly just so new. I'm just trying to. I've had one instructor who had told me what he'll do is he'll find his beginning and end, and then fit everything else in between, and then because it's a lot easier to know where the story's going to go or where a character is going to go to, and then it's easier to figure out in between, what happens between then and there. So if I can get those broad strokes in, I think that'll help. And then maybe developing a little bit of the what do you call it? The properties of the world, like what are its rules, and how do the characters work within those rules. And it's
can you give us maybe some example, like what would you recommend, or maybe what to avoid when you're creating the world?
Oh shoot, I'm no expert in this part, so I don't know how my advice is going to go, but I would just say try not to do. I mean, cliches is there because it works, but try to stay away from it if you can, because it's been done. A lot of this been done. We've got the elf and the dwarf and the ranger, and you got to try to develop something new. There's been so many takes on that; it's just done. So I think it's just finding a new way to show off that story, and I think that's what Game of Thrones does so well. Is it takes that genre, but it twists it a bit. It makes its own rules in its world and its own. Sure, it's a fantasy about good versus evil, but there's a lot of gray things going on in the middle that are what's interesting about it. I think the big ultimate evil versus good is a very much it's almost like part of the environment itself. It's not really a big part of individual stories. Maybe it's all working up to that point now, but I feel not to be too cliche. I think, I don't know, but cliche works. So I don't know, maybe it's just taking those cliche things and putting your own twist on it.
So how do you make your maybe dragons special, because if also some people have a certain image of a dragon and maybe it's based on one animal, so do you combine some random animals maybe which people wouldn't expect in a dragon, or?
Possibly. See, for me, I don't find myself as a very strong conceptual designer. I don't think I'm very good with the concept, like creating unique things. I feel like I can put an image together really well, and I can render well enough. But when it comes to being very creative, and I think that's also part of why my IP is so slow, is because I'm not highly creative. I have skill, but I think the creative part holds me back a little bit. So for me, I worry more about what's going to make this a compelling image rather than a compelling dragon per se, if that makes sense.
How do I the composition and the structure?
How do I organize my space and make that work?
Oh, really cool. And so do you have like something you do daily which contributes to your, like progress in art and successful like art career?
I'm sorry, I didn't understand the first part of the question.
Like a daily ritual, maybe meditation, or as you mentioned that you put stuff in your notebook or these kind of things?
I wish I was like that, but I'm just usually, okay, I need to get this sketch done today. Let's go and sit down and get this sketch done. So in between, getting my daughter ready for school and picking her up, I sit in the office or sit in my studio and just get whatever needs to be done, whether it's an oil painting or a sketch. I should be more disciplined about that for sure, but I'm just, right now, it's just my brain, it can only take so much.
So maybe in the future projects, as you said, maybe
Yes.
you will collaborate with someone on the creativity or something like that.
That could very much be a way I go. Yeah.
So
Collaboration.
if you think about like really far future and what would you like to be remembered for, is there something you would like to share as a key takeaway?
Yeah, I don't know. I can't think of anything in particular. I'm hopefully just that I did good work, while I was around, and it'll be inspirational and remembered way down the line. I hope I'm not remembered for the bad stuff that I do. I don't want people looking back going, oh yeah, he was hit and miss. I'd rather be like, oh yeah, you did good work. I don't know. That's a hard one to answer, but.
And maybe a last advice or kind of key takeaway what a starting artist or someone who is just breaking into industry, maybe something from your experience.
Mm-hmm. The advice I usually will give is to find good training, find a good school that's going to train you in good fundamentals. Look at the student work, and if the student work is good, then the school's going to be good. If you can find a school that's good with the foundation, the fundamental stuff, I think that's always strong. I came from that background, so I can vouch for it. It works. And, be cool, because a lot of times you're working with people. You have to have a good working relationship. There's so many artists out there who are so good, but they're not getting work because they are a nightmare to work with. So you could have less skill, but be very easy to work with and a very, you get your work done on time, you're very professional, and still get more work than the person who might be better than you, but is a nightmare to work with. So be cool, get training, and socialize, get out there and network. You got to talk to other artists and talk to the directors and get feedback. Take the feedback genuinely, try to, assuming it's constructive criticism. And don't try not to defend your work. So many times when I look over students' work, they constantly are defending their work. Mm-hmm. It's like, you want me to look at your work and give you feedback so you're going to get better. Listen, even if it's something that maybe you've heard before, just humor me or humor the person that's looking at your work, and try to take into heart what they're saying about your work. It's only going to hopefully make you better.
Yeah, definitely, because we always need to learn the whole life. So
yeah, definitely
progressing. Yeah, so definitely, and thank you so much again for being here. It was so nice.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, and thanks everyone who is watching or listening, and see you in the next episode.
Bye.
Hey guys, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate you being here, and if you enjoyed this video, please subscribe because I post new videos every week. I would be also super happy if you let me know your thoughts in comments and give the video a thumbs up. You can find all the resources mentioned in this episode at artsideoflife.com. Just type a guest name in the search bar. There is also a couple of free artist resources ready for you. So if you want to listen to the interviews on the go too, make sure to check out the podcast at artsideoflife.com/podcast. Continue to inspire each other, and I will see you guys in the next episode. Bye!